We're back from sports. Thank you for staying with us on the AM show. Now, it's all about ending road accidents. But have you ever considered this? According to the Upper West Regional Director of the DVLA, out of a total of 1,214 clients who took part in the theoretical test in the region, 32% of them failed. Again, 19% of the 988 persons who took part in the traffic test also failed. What's the picture nationwide? How do we tackle this? Let's watch this report from the Upper West correspondent, our Upper West correspondent, Rafiq Salam. It will paint the picture for you.
Director of the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Authority, DVLA, Zuma Thomas, briefing board members of the DVLA on their operations, revealed that 68% and 81% of clients who took part in Upper West Regional Director of the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Authority, DVLA, Zuma Thomas, briefing board members of the DVLA on their operations, revealed that 68% and 81% of clients who took part in terror and traffic tests, respectively, in the year 2021, passed.
Our terror test, not all terror exams must qualify automatically. We made 1,240 passes and then failed 552. That 32% and 68. You look at it in the chart, the demonstration is clear, 32% and then the 68%. In traffic test, we had 9, 8, 8, and 81. That's 81%, and the fail is 232.
Zuma Thomas spoke of the financial gains made in their operations in the last 3 years.
We look at 2019, we made 727,920. In 2020, we grew marginally to 793,320.50. In 2021, we had 877,222. That is for road fund. You look at the variance between the years 19, 20, and 21 is 84,404.50, a growth of 11%. Our licensing duties, one of our operational areas, in 2019 we made 574.485. In 2020 it shot up to 807,827.70. And in 2021 it went to 587,363. If we look at the variance, it's 50,538,050, a growth of 6.26%.
Interacting with staff of the authority, board chairman of the DVLA, lawyer Frank Davis, noted that due to the efficient, effective, and professionalism exhibited by staff of the DVLA, it is touted as one of the foremost institutions in the country, evident in the number of awards back over the last few years.
That you, the staff, and the employees all over Ghana have now understood the work ethics, discipline, and culture of service that this authority prides itself for. We are no longer in the league of corruptible institutions. We stand tall. And so far, we have chalked a lot of successes and have won coveted trophies.
Deputy Chief Executive Officer of DVLA in charge of financial services, Kwame Apiakubi, opined that due to innovation and technology, they have been able to minimize the activities of middlemen, popularly known as Goro boys.
I think DVLA, we believe that the issue of Goro, we can solve it with technology. So if you've seen how we've actually improved or improve our services through IT, now it will come to a time that there wouldn't be anything for you to do. We know with IT we'll be able to solve this issue, and you can testify that now with Goroism is better than before. And now I wouldn't say that we've completely eliminated it, but you see with few time or few years to come, you see that if it's not removed, it will become a very minimal. So with technology, we are going to solve the issue.
Reporting for the news, Rafiq Salam, Wow.
So that is the picture. But how do we fare, or how are we faring on a national scale? We get into this discussion as we interact with our guests this morning, who are going to be sharing their thoughts with us on the state of affairs when it comes to, the testing we're going through and how it is reflecting nationally, how this is impacting the sort of accidents we have. Our guests, Henry Asumaning, he is with the NRSA. He is Senior Manager Planning and Programs at the National Road Safety Authority. We have Kafui Semevo, Director, Driver Testing and Licensing Authority, that is the DVLA. And then Cecil Gabra, a transport consultant and CEO, Top Tech Transport and Logistics. We get interactive with them. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Good morning.
So I hear only one. Is that Kafui?
Yeah, good morning. This is Kafui. Good morning. This is Cecil.
Cecil, okay. So we have Cecil, we have Kafui, we have Henry. Do we have Henry? Okay. So we'll get to Henry as and when he patches through. But let me start with you, Kafui. These details we've been given and the numbers, do they come as any surprise to you over the years that you've been at post? These numbers that are being churned out from the Upper West region. Any surprises in there for you?
If you look at the numbers that you have received, of course there is.
Kafui, if you could just speak up a bit, increase your pitch a bit. I'm struggling to hear you.
You're struggling to hear me. Is it better?
Slightly better.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So if you look at the figures you have for the test, which is the driving test, and that is theory test, right? I saw it.
Right.
Yeah. Of course, I have seen some improvement in those figures, and basically surprising because that section of the country do not have a lot of driving schools like we have down south, and therefore the number of persons who go through the driver training at the various driving schools do not have the advantages we have down south, and therefore if they are taking the state test with persons down south and they are almost having the same pass rate as the people down south, of course it is surprising, and it is just because there are certain measures that have also been put in to ensure that they are not too much deprived of the opportunity to also have training before the test is done.
Okay, so too quick.
Lower than that.
Right. Some quick interjections. So the suggestion then, from what you've just said, is that this 32% failure rate when it comes to the testing, at least the theoretical testing, and all of that. You're suggesting that this is at par with what we find down south, where there are more logistics and opportunities for people to train when it comes to driving. So there's not too much of a disparity then.
There's not too much of a disparity between the three. Yeah.
Right. Can you give us a fair idea? So let's take the Greater Accra region, for example. Down here, what do the stats say when it comes to the theoretical examination and the pass rate? What can you share with us on the back of that? I mean, I just want to for us to have some sort of measuring scale.
The Greater Accra region, for instance, is around 80% pass rate.
80%, right.
Yeah.
Okay. So some parity there. You mentioned that in the Upper West region, it's also on the back of some measures you have put in place to ensure that they are not too deprived. Measures like what exactly?
All right, so because we do not have the same, a lot of training schools, we collaborate with the existing schools to ensure that they also provide training for everybody who goes in to apply for the driver's license. Now, what is done is sometimes they will have to go with our team to the various communities and provide the training, because the numbers are less and they are sometimes far from the communities. And we have an outreach program. So they do go into the communities to provide training. And the numbers you are seeing also include motorbikes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So motorbikes in there. It would have been interesting to know what component goes into the motorbikes, especially because in the last few years, a lot of our road traffic accidents have involved motorbikes. Last year, over 40% of them. So it would have been interesting to know what component of those who failed, for example, factor into motorbikes, and those who passed that factor into motorbikes. But let me come to Cecil. So looking at this picture that has been painted and with the failure rate, for you, is it a cause for worry? Kafui says this is reflective of nationally what we see. It doesn't imply that the northern belt is faring any worse than you have in the southern belt, even in Accra. Cold comfort for you? Hello, Cecil?
I hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Did you get the question?
Okay. Yes, I got it. Right. It's quite unfortunate with figures from the northern sector, but I don't blame the situation, because it is not so easy for people to just set up a driving school. I have been the past president of the Association of Driving Schools, and I know what goes into it. It is not just by buying vehicles and getting them dual pedaled and so on, but a lot must go in staffing. And then if you pick an instructor, trained instructor, and then the training is provided by DVLA. Right now, what really happens is that it becomes quite difficult to maintain such an instructor. So obviously that instructor will leave your driving school,
right,
okay, if you don't pay him well. So up the north, I know there are a lot of financial difficulties, growth of the economy. It is not like those of us in the south. So I can really understand it. And I feel we should have a collaboration that is with DVLA. I'm talking about the Association of Driving Schools. I'll be speaking with them, that it is not up to DVLA to go and do the training. It is up to we, the trainers, to go up the north to assist them to know much about driving, and then we'll be able to write their theory examinations. It's quite worrying because of the quality, because if I'm such a person who may fail will obviously still be driving, and then that will be quite dangerous on our roads. And for instance, if a simple road sign which says no U-turn, and this driver who drives, driving is quite easy. I started driving at the age of 13 years, but keep quiet, please.
Well, you just said it live on air, Cecil.
Yes, well, at those times, early. Early those days, it was much more easier, you see, when your dad had 2-3 vehicles and then you could just hop in it. But that is not driving. Driving comes with a lot of topics. For instance, when I was the president of the association, I made sure that my executives collaborated with DVLA to come up with topics. We have 18 topics, theory topics that you need to cover before you start even driving. Before even DVLA will give you a learner's license. I mean, that was the whole idea. Go to the driving school, learn, and then the topics will not be just like sit in the vehicle and move. I mean, we're talking about first aid. We are talking about driving under the influence of drugs,
right,
and alcohol, where you have an expert like a medical doctor teaching you and so on. I mean, it's going to be difficult up the north to have all those people, and it is expensive to pay a medical doctor for maybe 2 hours, a first aider for about 4 hours to come and teach maybe only 4 people first aid. So I think we need that collaboration to help those people from the north.
Right. So this is from where you sit, this is what you see. We can do even more. But according to CAFWE, like I said earlier, this is none too different from the results we're getting in the southern belt, including the Greater Accra region. So is it as much as a problem as you are depicting now? I mean, looking at and we'll get into the bit about the national averages, but is it that much of a problem that we're having 32% of those in the Upper West region failing the theoretical test? That means 68% passed. And again, on the other end, when it comes to the practical bit, 19% of them failing, which actually shows that 81% passed. Is it that bad?
Well, it is very, very serious. Like I said earlier, it is serious. I mean, if you compare the South to the North, obviously there's a lot of business in the South, and there's even competition amongst the driving school to say who must be the best, who should have its own student drivers passing examinations and so on. It is really worrying. And then all these people, just like I said, are driving on their own, and they are not. Enforcement agencies will occasionally check to find out whether they have licenses and so on, but they are driving, which is really dangerous.
Okay, so that's a good angle to look at it from. And I'll come back to you, CAFWE, after I engage Henry on a very important question, but just hold it there. Henry, so listening to both parties, Cecil has raised his concerns about the figures we're getting when it comes to the theoretical and practical tests. CAFWE says, yes, there are problems, but we're working at them. They are not as bad as you may see at first glance. What picture does this paint for you, Henry, when you look at the fact that we're putting road safety side by side or conjoined with these results we see? Because garbage in, garbage out. The people you get, passing or whatever, it's going to reflect on how they drive on the road. What is your take on these figures?
Thank you very much, and good morning to our viewers and listeners. Excuse me, because I didn't really hear what Kathy was saying. It was before I came online. But
so just to aid you, Henry, CAFWE said that looking at the statistics, it's not that they are excellent. Of course, there's work to be done. But basically, they are not too far off from what, pertains to the Southern Belt. And in the Southern Belt, we have more logistics here in terms of drivers training, in terms of the driving schools and all of that. That was basically what he was saying, that if you consider the figures, 32% failure rates when it comes to theory in the Upper West and 19% when it comes to the practicals in the Upper West, it's not too far off what you would see in the Southern Belt. Cecil, however, I'm sure you heard him, was saying that it is a big worry because if any driver is not properly trained, or if the person is not fit to be on the road, that could lead to disaster, aka an accident. So that's the thrust of what we've shared so far.
Okay, thank you very much. What I know is that if you go through the DVLA, the driver testing and testing system, and you fail, you don't become a driver on the road, because you would have to go back and retake the exams until you pass before you are allowed onto the road.
Exactly.
I think that's the right. So when there's a failure rate, which yes, it's true, in natural sense, I think it's also on the high side, then it means that these people are not part of the driving population of Ghana. So they are not considered when it comes to these drivers who we have on the road, because the drivers we have on the road are licensed drivers who have gone through the system and passed these exams before they are allowed onto the road. So if it comes to the road safety situation, we know that sometimes people without driver's licenses do drive on our roads, and people with expired licenses do drive on the roads. But this is where the enforcers come in, that the Ghana Police Service, they come in to check that every person on the road is a licensed driver, and as soon as the person is able to prove that he is a qualified driver by showing a valid driving license. The assumption is that that person has his or her exam to be on the road. So when it comes to the people who are failing, it's just like any other exam. When you fail, you are not promoted. You are not part of the body. That's how it is. So you are not a driver on our roads when you have failed the exam.
Right. That brings me to another crucial question, and I'll address this to Kafui because you are in the thick of things. When it comes to the DVLA, we keep getting reports that, sometimes some of the people, they will pass because, in fact, there are certain things that are done, maneuvering. The Guru boys are no longer in the system thanks to some digitization and all of that. But there are still ways, apparently, that people are employing to ensure that they get licenses, they get their roadworthy certificates without actually having gone through the processes as they ought to. Has that come to your attention?
All right, thank you. Let me just make some clarification before I respond to that. So if we go back to the figures, you see that the number of persons who pass or go for the total number of persons who go for the theory test, for instance, are more than the persons who go for the practical test.
Yes, that is true. It's reflective of even
Exactly.
These results.
Now, that clearly tells you that even the economic reason is also cited. It's part of it because the licensing process is divided into two, where you obtain your learner license, do your theory before you go for the practical. And then, so the payment regime is in two stages. People are able to pay for the first stage, and then they are not able to raise funds for the second stage. So if you see the disparity, you see that most of them will not come to complete the second stage.
Right.
And that is where I agree that the collaboration needs to be strengthened, and then we find a solution to it. Coming back to where people do not get through the system but obtain a driver's license.
Basically, they go through the back door.
Now, if you go through our system today, you find out that you cannot start a process but for a driver's license and not go through the process and obtain the driver's license. If you do that, we always have the back office of the team who always will look at the data that comes in, verify if each person has completed what the person is supposed to complete before the license is issued. So today, anybody who has attempted to obtain a driver's license without taking the test, and what we have done also is to interface our printing system with the test system.
Right.
So once you finish your theory test, your results automatically will move into the printing system. So we are able to see whether you took a theory test or not. So it's not, they are not standalone systems. We see where we may have they still have some human interference will be the practical.
And I was about to get to that. I was about to ask you, Kafui, whether you were sure that all of those who were passing the practical test actually had even got behind the steering of their vehicle and gone through the test, because there are so many things we know about that as well. But you make your point.
Yes. So is a theory is an in-traffic test where we are paying more attention to. Now we have two categories of drivers we license each time.
Right.
We have people who started driving before going through the driving school and coming for the test. And then we have the totally novice drivers. The novice drivers, we don't have much problem with them because they always will follow the procedure. And if you're a novice driver and you sit behind the steering and you don't know how to drive, you are never going to move that vehicle, so you don't even pass. Where we are paying attention to most today is those who are driving already and who go for the driving test. We realize that some of the tests do not cover the total requirements. So yes, of course, they appear for the test, but there is a standard time and standard observation for everybody who go for a practical test. So for instance, if you are driving already or you're a novice driver, your test is not supposed to last less than 25 minutes. And there are routes that have been demarcated that you are supposed to drive on for whoever is testing you to observe. We are doing some review where what we have done now before the review will give us what we should implement is we have rather strengthened the monitoring. So we visit the test grounds most often. Now, the other thing we are doing is that the test itself is going to be scored electronically, because you observe that sometimes somebody may go for test, and because it is manual, the possibility of somebody changing results is high. We are moving to the stage where we will score this test electronically, and then we ourselves are involved in the monitoring, and we do unannounced visits. We also are putting in some mystery shopping mechanisms just to identify those who may be compromising the test.
Right.
Yes, so those are the things we are doing for now.
I'll come back to you on more substantive matters, and hopefully you'd be able to curb this, menace, so that as many drivers as possible are going through exactly what they ought to go through, so that at least with that knowledge base on the road, they will do the right thing. But Henry, I just want to, on the back of what I've just discussed with Kafui, yesterday it was like an action movie of sorts, right in front of the multimedia group Joy FM. We had this gentleman in a Sprinter bus, and apparently what we found out was that he had hit a lady in her saloon car and was trying to get away, and he went past some 5-6 vehicles, sped past. It was so bad that he was going at top speed, nearly rammed into some other driver in an Audi vehicle, and he was heading towards the traffic light, the Atinka traffic light. I don't know whether he was eventually apprehended, because the lady in the saloon car then followed, also speeding after him, trying to get him to stop. You have drivers like this bus driver who, and I couldn't verify whether he had a license or not, but if he were licensed, you have drivers like him on the road, sometimes endangering the lives of practically everybody else. How do we deal with the situation from a road safety perspective, conjoined with the DVLA? Because these people are licensed. How then is it that they are able to renew their licenses, yet they can do such things on the road? I mean, I don't know whether you get where I'm going with this, but how do we deal with such situations?
Thank you very much, Jimmy. And this is what most road safety experts have been talking about, the attitude of road users, especially the driving population. It is a well-known fact that when you are involved in any crash, be it minor or major or serious, the first thing you need to do is to call on the Ghana Police Service, the NCTV, who would come and do their initial investigation, and then there's a process that is followed. But we have some recalcitrant drivers or road users who, when such things happen, because maybe they know that it is their fault, and they would eventually have to pay for the damage, would want to just run away. But one thing I would want everybody to understand is that when it comes to Ghana, the traffic laws, that's why we have the insurance. And minimum for every vehicle is the third-party insurance. In the case that you just cited, if this driver had just waited, reported to the police, and the police had done their investigation and even found him to be at fault, the insurance company would have taken over the cost of repair for this lady. So sometimes maybe it's the understanding of insurance and also we know that there are some drivers who do not have this valid insurance. And as I said, when it comes to the ones who do not have this valid documentation, that is where the Ghana police comes onto the road to check. And if you are found culpable, you are prosecuted. But as you said, you couldn't interact with this driver, so you don't know even if he had a valid insurance or not. But the assumption would be that so far as he's on the road, he has a valid insurance. Let us try and let people understand that with a valid insurance, even if it is your fault, the insurance companies would come in and bail you out. Even when it is third party, whoever you hit would be taken care of by the insurance. And if it is preventive, your vehicle would even also be repaired by the insurance. And it is for these reasons, because we know that as we all use the road, there are sometimes that's why it used to be called accidents. Sometimes they are unavoidable accidents. But when they happen, you should be able to be cushioned. And that is why insurance comes inside. So let's all understand that when these things happen, let us just report to the police, allow the police to do their investigation. And then, if I am at fault, the insurance company would come in and bail me out.
So obviously,
there's this understanding that maybe people, because sometimes people would crash into a vehicle, when you look at it, you know, even the light itself, you cannot buy. So you intend to run away rather than stay and solve and face the issue. But that is why there is insurance. And that is why we should always have valid insurance certification, so that these things, we won't worry ourselves about it. So this driver with a valid insurance should have just reported to the police, and whatever the cost may be, the insurance would have taken on. It's all.
Right. So that point is clearly made, but that in itself also creates a problem, and merely for the sake of education. It is criminal, isn't it, when there is such an incident, motor accident, and no report is made. You are aware that some people settle their own differences between them. You know, sometimes it's a gentleman's agreement, especially if it's between two men who would say, you know what, I've taken your license plate number, maybe I've taken shots of your license itself and all of that. I'm expecting that you do X, Y, Z. And they settle it there. What that does is it also doesn't give us a proper picture of the number of accidents, for example, that we have in a year and all of that. How problematic is that?
If you are going into a gentleman's agreement, you need to still inform the police. And when the police comes, he will take his notes. Then he would also note that you have agreed to do 1, 2, 3. Why it is necessary is that, let's say I'm involved in a crash with you.
Right.
And then I agree that, okay, it's my fault, so I'm going to do ABC. But we just have a gentleman's agreement without the police involvement. When I leave and I am not doing it, it becomes difficult for you to push me. Because, yes, we agreed, but you can't even find me to do it. Because, one, you cannot seize my license. But when the police comes in, and we even have the gentleman's agreement, what the police would do is that depending on the situation, they may seize my license or impound my vehicle until I have done what I said I would do for you before they release it back to me.
Right.
You see? So I would urge everybody that even if it is a gentleman's agreement, involve the police so that when anything goes wrong, the police can step in. But if you do not involve them, and now things are not going as planned, and you want the police to come in, it becomes very difficult for the police because they are not in the know from the offset. They don't know
it's a valid point you're making, Henry, but look at the other side as well. I mean, I interact with a lot of people, so you get to find out. Some people would tell you, once the police comes in, sometimes even the two vehicles are impounded, and for quite a bit of time, and the processes to follow. For about a fortnight, you don't have access to your vehicles and all of that. And should that be something we ought to look at in the police process itself? Or is it because these are reasons people will give you sometimes and tell you, I don't want to go through all that.
No, but I want to just explain. You
right.
see, when the police impound these vehicles, it is when the police need to do a report, establish who is at fault. But when we are talking about gentleman's agreement, that one I have already agreed.
Right.
So they don't even need to do investigations. I have agreed. But they need to ensure that it is stated, and I have signed to the fact that I have agreed that it is my fault, and that I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. As I said, depending on the severity. Sometimes, in some situations, the gentleman's agreement does not hold because of the circumstance leading to it and whatever happens.
Right.
But in cases where the gentleman's agreement holds, what the police will do is that whoever agrees that he or she is at fault, the police would hold on something that the person may have to come back and pick up, because if they just leave you to go and you don't do it, finding you becomes an issue. So what they would do is, as I said, depending on the situation, they may seize some documents or impound the vehicle. Then when you have done what you said you would do, then they would release it to you.
Right.
So there's a difference between when there's no agreement as to who is at fault, because that one is an investigative procedure where the police would impound the vehicle. They would even call on DVLA for assessment. There's a procedure to follow. So that is different from the one that you agree that, okay, it's my fault, I'm going to repair the vehicle. That one, your vehicle be the one who is affected. If I have agreed to repair his vehicle, what they normally would do is that they will tell him, if he has a mechanic, to do an assessment, and then if there's an agreement, I would take something. That's how they do it. It doesn't take that long when there's no issue about who's at fault.
And I brought up this bit for educational, purposes. So it is good you've painted that picture. So anyone who is thinking, oh, once this happens, my vehicle is going to sue, let's just have a gentleman's agreement, which may not necessarily pan out the way you want. Think twice, involve the police. Let me come to Cecil. And I've intentionally held you for a while because I wanted you to hear from the other sides so that the next few questions I would ask would be more relevant and you can delve into them properly. I would start from the end of the Ghana Highway Code, which goes as far back as, if memory serves, to 1974, thereabouts. And I just want you to look at its relevance in terms of the dynamics that have changed, even our roads have changed in a way, and even those who pass the exams, how this reflects on them in terms of a very modern world and what we're doing in Ghana. Is our highway code even apt as of today? And what are the challenges you may see in them? Hello, Cecil?
The Ghana Highway Code. I am here.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yes, I've always been talking about the Ghana Highway Code. Some of us are very old drivers, and I feel it's an opportunity for us to add a lot to the Highway Code, to make it new, to make it much more interesting than just to have that small booklet. Well, of course, all over the world, highway codes are not bulky.
Right.
But the sad thing is that we have the same words from 1952 in the highway code.
Right.
Same words, just few changes. And then if you look at the dates that was published, it's 1974 when Ghana moved from left to right. Okay.
So in essence, from the 50s, we've practically been using the same thing till 2022. Precisely.
There are so many dynamics in driving. If you talk about road markings, okay, we don't have all the road markings in the highway codes.
Right.
When we talk about road signs, we don't have all the road signs. We need instructions, proper instructions. But the thing is that do people read? People don't really read. That's also one thing. But then for us as trainers, we always say that every day in your life, at least read a page of the Ghana Highway Code if you are a professional driver. Because when I am lecturing, for instance, I tend to quiz them a lot to give me the meaning of no stopping, no parking, and no waiting. And honestly speaking, out of about 80 people, you have one or two people giving you the right information.
Wow.
Right. But yes, they are all in the highway code. Highway code is not bad, but I feel it's time for us to look at it and upgrade it and stop reprinting from 1974. Right?
Which specific aspects of the highway code do you feel are most in need of change to reflect the times?
Or at least we should have a lot more of pictorials, okay, actual pictorials. I'll give you a nice example, like who has the right to go. If you look at a place like the American Embassy where you have a Y junction,
Right.
okay, yes, it's really confusing when you get there. You look at other intersections, you would realize that no, I mean, we need proper education on it. So if we have pictures in the highway code and we have some few explanations, I think we'll be moving towards the right direction. So Kafui, give me the contract and I will work on it for you.
Did you just bid live on television, Cecil? You're incorrigible. And I was just about to come with to Kafui on that bit before I come back to you, Cecil. Kafui, how do you respond to that? That, you know, Ghana Highway Code is a bit antiquated, if you like, and Cecil is calling for more pictorial effect. Do you think we can do more of that for the highway code moving forward? And do you think he has a point?
Oh, yes, he has a point. Now, if you look at the highway code that was issued by the Ghana Highway Authority.
Authority, yeah.
Yeah. Now, we have also realized that it has to be improved. So there is some review ongoing. We've not gotten to the stakeholder involvement yet. So very soon, people like Cecil will be involved in the process so that we all come up with a new highway code. And talking about introducing more pictorial illustrations, we have even started doing that in our theory test. Because you find out that worded questions, really, sometimes you may read about 3 lines, and it will take you some time to reason about it before you can even go choose an answer. We are introducing more pictorial questions. The idea of training and testing is not to, let's say, fail people, but is to develop their competence, knowledge, and skills. So the more you introduce pictorial questions, the more you introduce pictorial illustrations to the highway code, it will help people to remember what they've been taught, and then they can apply those on the road. Now, talking about behavior, for instance, what you just spoke to Henry about, it also goes down to training and enforcement. If you want to correct behavior, you start with training, you must hold people responsible for what they do. If that is missing, you can do all the training, but people will still continue to do. And that is the nature of human beings anyway. Until you are inspecting, they will not comply. Just yesterday, when your team called me, I was on the way to Cape Coast. And if you see how some drivers behave on the road, and you ask yourself, do they even value their own lives to value the life of people on their vehicle? Now, I was very behind about 3 long vehicles. A vehicle from nowhere overtook all of us. And there was a vehicle approaching, but he doesn't mind. That vehicle approaching has to stop somewhere for him to pass. So if enforcement doesn't go with training, we'll have less of the training impact. I know the Ghana Police Service are doing their best, but we have to get to a point where drivers or on their own know that if I do this, I'll get punished for it. Or if I do this, it is not safe for me, it's not safe for other road users. And that is where I think the collaboration should be working towards. And there are a lot of things the National Road Safety Authority is thinking of, the DVLA and the police. And once we start to collaborate with the institutions with license to train, we should be seeing more impact. Because yes, if you see that now the 3 state agencies are collaborating well, we need to bring in the training institutions to also help us do what we need to do. And I think that the campaigns that JFM is running with the National Road Safety and the DVLA, the police, are also things that we want to broaden so that, the impact is felt.
I'm going to be taking your final comments on this discussion, I mean, the way forward. But I'll stay with you, Kafui, to give your final comments. And I just want you to weave in the bit about, so those who are unlettered or unschooled and they drive or they have been driving, what processes do you take them through for licensing? And could you also just add the national average when it comes to the fail or pass rates in our exams? I mean, do you have an idea what the national average is?
Okay. So those who do not have formal education, and we don't classify anybody as literate or not literate, because if somebody speaks, let's say, Chi, and you do not speak Chi, you are literate in that area. However, there is opportunity for everybody to train in the language you understand.
Right.
So the instructors are not restricted to use a particular language for training. Once you are fluent in a particular language and the learner is also fluent or can understand, you can instruct in that language. The next level is that soon.
So do you actually deliver such training in the local languages and all of that?
So the training schools do.
Okay.
Yes, the training schools do. The next level is that the theory test for now is in English. And that may be even some of the reasons you see that a lot more people will apply for the first stage and may not even come for the second stage. So you see that people at the second stage where you have to do your theory test and do your practical test, the numbers keep reducing. What we are doing as of now, and very soon we will announce when we are implementing it, is that we are getting approval from the Ministry of Finance to upgrade our existing theory test to include 6 Ghanaian languages, which are Ga, Ewechi, Hausa, Agbani, and then Nzima.
Okay. All right.
Once this is done, we are also moving away from the system where you have to use the mouse to select an answer. We are introducing touch screens because basically these category of persons, if they have a phone, they are able to tap on the phone to dial numbers. The languages are going to come in voice. So you don't have to read in that language, you just have to listen to the person in that language, and then you tap the answer. So those are the interventions we are bringing.
Can you just quickly sneak in, for the sake of time, my apologies.
Okay.
Can you just sneak in the national average if you have it?
The national average is also around 80%.
Around 80%. For both theory and practice?
Yes, for both theory and practice.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. A minute each to Cecil and Henry, just with your summary comments. I'll start with you, Cecil.
Well, it's all about road safety, and I feel that the 4 technical E's must work. That's engineering of the roads, education, enforcement, emergency services, so that we save lives and then we all arrive in one piece and not in pieces.
Interesting, the 4 E's. Henry, for you, what would be your parting comments?
Thank you very much. I think it is in this light of attitudinal change for road users. That is why the National Road Safety Authority, together with the DVLA, the police, and the media and other stakeholders, came up with this Stay Alive campaign, which seeks to drum a lot of positive behavior into the minds of road users. so that with time we know that their attitude and their conscience will be appealed to, so that the attitudes can change on our road. Right. And as I always say, that it is better to be late than to be called the late, and it is better to be patient than to be a patient at the hospital.
Well, let's all stay alive. Let's go through the right channels, do the right things on our roads, and, of course, safeguard all our lives. But thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining the conversation. Of course, the last person you heard there, Henry Asumaning, of course, with the National Road Safety Authority, Cecil Gabra, CEO, Top Tech Transport and Logistics, and, of course, Kafui Semevo, who is also with the DVLA. Gentlemen, thank you so much for engaging us this morning. When we return, we're going to be talking about teenage pregnancy, safe abortions, and what is happening in some parts of the country. Africa Education Watch is talking about the fact that on average for about 5 years now, we've been having over 100,000 of these incidents. What is the picture nationally? How do we resolve some of these issues? That is up next on the AM Show. Do stay.